All right, so welcome to our second edition on our special edition on birds. We'll be talking about birds from January until March to coincide with the celebration of the raptor migration into Tanjung Tuan area, Tanjung Tuan Port Dickson area. And so this is our second talk. We'll be talking about birds of Singapore and also birds of water birds of Malaysia. Just a bit of background about this program. It's brought to you by MNS NS Malacca Branch, and we are actually the voice for nature. And if you'd like to participate, you're welcome to join us. Membership fees is only 80 ringgit per year for family members, and you can join us through the link there. One of the less known activities that we do is actually being part of the Committee for the Environmental Impact Assessment with the government. We always try to give our feedback on how to mitigate or reduce any impact major developments may have on the on wildlife as well as on forests. And we also now doing our program. All our nature activities are now basically on this ecopartners.online. Main benefits are you can actually attend a talk with a click of a button. So no need to register with Google Forms anymore. And we also we are giving points based on the positive environmental actions that you do. And soon with the Ministry of Education approval, students will also be able to get extracurricular activities points as well. So for the month of January to March 2021, this is the lineup of our program. We've done January 9th by Andy Lee on urban birds. So today we're talking about water birds and also birds of Singapore. The next 2 weeks, on the 6th of February, a special 2-hour edition by Lim Kim Chai, talking about raptor identification. And then we go around Malaysia to look at the various birds that we have so that you all can appreciate. We will start with Johor, Negeri Malacca. And then we will go to Fraser's Hill, Selangor, Penang. All right, and then hopefully we can all see you. We can see all of you at Raptor Watch. Fingers crossed, okay? All right. These are our online activities, online presence. If you don't mind, could you take out your camera, your scanner, can scan this particular Facebook and YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, and also help us like the Facebook page. So all our information will be available there. So today, very special guests, very experienced birders will be enlightening us about birds of Singapore and also birds of water birds of Malaysia. Let me just give a brief introduction. So Alan, okay, let me just stop sharing the screen. So Alan Owyong is a longtime member of the Nature Society of Singapore. He was a past chairperson of the NSS Bird Group. He's currently a committee member of the Bird Group and also the Rare Birds Records Committee and co-admin of the Facebook group called Singapore Birders. He was instrumental in the development of the first app on birds of Singapore in 2012 and has overseen several outreach and conservative initiatives of the society. He contributes regularly his nature and bird photos to the society's publications, magazines, and websites. That's on Alan. Yong Ding Li is the Flyway Conservation Coordinator of BirdLife International's Asia Division, based in Singapore. And Ding Li oversees various projects for migratory birds in Southeast Asia and has worked closely with the MNS Kuching and Penang branches on migratory species conservation. Ding Li is also the author of the recently published Field Guide to the Birds of Malaysia and Singapore. And you can buy that online through MNS website. Later, I can share you the link for that, okay? So now we can move on to the presentation. So Ding Li or Alan, who will start first?
Yeah, I'll be starting first.
Okay, so you can start the share screen and then we can proceed. Thank you.
Okay.
So just on housekeeping, if you have any questions, please key into the chat box. You can also key into the Facebook page as well, because we have one young lady helping us in monitoring the questions. And also keep in mind to about maybe 45 minutes later, we will have the quiz coming up. But today's session will be a bit longer. So all the details all the information may not be readily available by that time, but the link should open up inside the events that you registered. Okay. So over to you, Alan. Thank you.
Can you also see a screen now? Hello?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. The talk will be okay. Anyway, good afternoon. Woody, thanks for inviting us and Ding Li to today's talk. We'll be talking about the activities of bird group. Just a short intro, and follow with the birding in Singapore, and then we go to about talking about some of the commonly seen shorebirds in Singapore. I mean, in Malaysia and Singapore as well. Actually, no difference. And I think Ding Li, we're going to end up with the conservation. So for the society bird group, it's one of the more active groups in the society. We do a lot of census, surveys, raptor watches, and all the parrot counts and pelagics, habitat and species conservation. We publish monthly bird reports, and the most important thing, the annual bird race. And we also do the checklist for the country, and also vet all the bird records. So that's, in summary, what we do. We're a lot of volunteers doing all this. Okay, hang a minute. Something is not right. I cannot get out of the screen, okay? Hang a minute. Okay, I'm gonna stop share and then start again, okay?
Okay, yep, go for it.
Okay, something's wrong with that one. Hang a minute. Share screen. See if it works or not. Okay, I think this one works better.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Second slide. We, of course, conduct a lot of monthly walks. This is one of the old photos of our walk in Bidadari. This is an old Muslim cemetery. I don't know anybody recognize the guy on the left pointing out to some birds. That's our very popular bird watcher, Sotari. This site actually is our migrant sort of a trap, but unfortunately it's now being taken over by the HDB to develop housing. But we fought for it and we managed to get some 9 hectares of space. Hopefully the migrants will return. Annual bird census, I think earlier we talked about what's the bird census before you all joined. We've been doing this since 1990, and I think we've got to do one more for this in end of this week. We normally do about 10 sites. Every year, we end up with about 3,000 plus species. Ding Li, can you remember what's the largest number of birds we had?
I don't know the largest because it was probably during the time when I was not born yet, but I can say that the current count is decreasing over time.
Yeah.
The trend seems to be a concern.
Even the species also decline. I think we get about 20, maybe 15, 20 species every year.
Yeah. Some species are not so common now, like Rufous neck.
The main areas are Sungai Buloh, Chek Java, at Ubin, the Manila Mud Flats, Kranji Marshes. All these I will just go through later on, one by one. Anyway, just to mention them. ABC, which is the annual bird census. This is one of our longest ongoing census for the bird group. started in 1986, I think.
86,
35 years ago. And we've been doing it every year, covering about 20 plus sites, correct? I think 20 plus sites.
Yes, I think it's increased over time also because more volunteers now.
Yeah, I think we cover just about every habitat in Singapore. And we do this in March so that we can get both the migrants and the residents, count. And because of this ABC, we are able to provide a lot of data when we do site conservation in Singapore. So we go back and dig up all our own records, and we can sort of tell which birds are increasing, which is decreasing, and it's a big help for us when we're doing conservation. I think we gotta do a rate data book on this one soon using this data.
The government wants to do a rate data book by the end of this year. So what we are currently trying to do is to look at the old data from 1986 until the present day, and try to get a sense of the trends, like whether if it's increasing or decreasing. If it's increasing, then okay. If decreasing, then we can increase the threat status.
Yeah. We also actually do another 2 more census. In mid-year, we do what they call a mid-year bird census for all residents. And in September, we do a fall migration. So actually, the birds are being counted 3 times a year. So none of these birds gonna escape us. The photo, I think, is a photo flock of a Doran starling and some Asian glossy starlings. We get hundreds of them during the migrant season. We also do Raptor Watch, but of course, our Raptor Watch is not like Tanjung Tuan. We do it in November, a 1-day count, about 10 sites. No, sorry, 7 sites. We get about something like 2,000, about 2,000 every year, 10 plus species. Sometimes we get 15, 18 species. This photo is taken at Telok Blangah Hill. It's one of our original sites. But the difference between our raptor count and the one in Tanjung Tuan is that we are doing the autumn count. The Tanjung Tuan is the spring count. I think the only autumn count in Malaysia is the one that Kim Chai is conducting in his house, in his balcony, I believe, or Scotts Hill. I was privileged to join him once in Scotts Hill to do the November or November, September count. Kim Chai, I can't remember now. Is it September that we do the count in Scotts Hill? Oh, Kim Chai's not around. I thought I saw him around.
I think he might be muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't get your thousands of OHBs coming to Tanjung Tuan, but one year we did actually have about 435 OHBs flying over this site in 1 hour, between 1 to 2. So that's our best record for Singapore. We also do parrot count. I think this one was not started. I started it, but then I think Ding Li now has hijacked it for me. Ding Li?
I'm happy to pass it back.
We did this because of a university in Germany, I think. They wanted to get a feel of what the trend of the native and, introduce species of urban parrots around. And I think it's a good thing that we did it because we found that our red-breasted parakeets are now alarmingly overtaking our native long-tailed parakeets. Anything to add, Ding Li?
I think the patterns are a bit concerning, so we should keep collecting this data. The good thing is that we now have 10 years of non-stop parrot data, so I think maybe about time for us to sit back, have a cup of coffee and see what's the pattern. Yeah, but the pattern that you mentioned is seems to be the case that the red-breasted is increasing quite quickly. Yeah, even the red data analysis shows that the red-breasted parakeet number has increased by 1,200% in the last 35 years. Yeah,
alarming. And I heard somebody did a study on the nesting, and they found that this red-breasted parakeets are using the same nest hole year after year. So they are out competing with our native parakeets now. Okay, this is quite recent actually. Pelagic surveys along the Straits of Singapore. The reason is pretty obvious. It's quite expensive to charter a boat. I think it costs us something like $1,500 for 1 day of pelagic survey. Luckily, we managed to get some sponsors, and in fact, actually, we did some of these surveys with NParks. I think last 10 years ago, or recently anyway. And because of the pelagic survey, we managed to record quite a few number of new species, especially seabirds, Jaegers, and shearwaters for our checklist. Ding Li, can you remember which Jaeger? Was it the Pomeranian or short-tailed shearwater?
I think short-tailed shearwater and Pomeranian Jaeger. Pomeranian Jaeger, I'm not sure whether if it was exactly in
the Straits.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it was in Indonesian waters or in Singapore waters.
Yeah, one our problem is that the Straits of Singapore is very narrow. There's no international water, as either Singapore water or Indonesian waters. So sometimes we can't be sure whether the bird is seen in the Indonesian side or the Singapore side. So now we have a new annex 1 or something like that for birds that we don't know whether, you know. Anyway, the good thing about the survey is that we found that the Straits of Singapore was a very important transit migration route for the swinhoe storm petrels. In May, thousands of them actually use the straits to go from the South China Sea to India. And in one morning when we go out, we can easily count up to 500 birds. I think one of our trip, we get 500 birds in the morning, one morning. Were you on a trip, Ding Li?
No, I have not been burning much in the last few years.
Okay. In the photo is our veteran ex-chairman of the, or long-time chairman of the bird group, Lim Kim Kian. I think most of you will know him. Those are old veteran birders. On the left, the lady with the red sleeve is the ST reporter, Audrey Tan. She came along, and after that, she wrote a big, nice article on the pelagic trip. Okay, now our big event of the year, the bird race. So I'll leave this to Mr. Ding Li, who actually is instrumental in getting our biggest bird race last year, the 36th bird race.
Yeah, so actually just a couple of words on the bird race. So the bird race is a really old, I call it an old project of the Nature Society, and it's been happening for, I don't know, since 1984 if I recall correctly. Usually it's been quite a compact personal event, so just a few of us, like 50, 60 of us. But I think in the last couple of years, there's been some of our donors who are really keen, they come to us and say that, we want to support local initiatives to promote nature appreciation. And it turned out that the bird race was something that one of these major companies was quite interested to do. So ever since then, I think already 2 years running, coming to the 3rd year, we've engaged this big development company. And they are now supporting the bird race in very comprehensive ways. So in 2019, we had the biggest bird race as of 2019, and then by 2020 we have the next biggest bird race as of 2020. So I think it's been growing quite quickly, and from the point of view of the Nature Society and also from BirdLife, we want to see how we can use the bird race to sell a conservation message. So we've been brainstorming, and 2 consecutive bird races, we have injected a very, very strong Southeast Asian conservation message into it. So for the first year's bird race, we wanted to emphasize straw-headed bulbul because it was one of those species that there's a huge population in Singapore compared to the rest of the world. I think approximately 33% of the estimated world population is in Singapore, and it's a species that the Nature Society wants to really ramp up efforts on conservation. So we did a straw-headed bulbul themed bird race. You can see those guys on the left side wearing all these straw-headed bulbul t-shirts, and I think it went very well. And then building on to that, this year we had another one that focuses more broadly on threatened species. And again, it's been really well received. So I think I'm really quite excited to see the bird race move from, from strength to strength. And looking forward to seeing what comes out of this year bird race, which I can only say will be bigger, if not as big as last year's bird race. But at the same time, as we're getting the support from Mapletree Investments, the company that's been supporting this work, I think they were also very keen to support other initiatives, and they have been, helping us with this series of conservation projects to promote local awareness of nature. We had a really nice workshop targeted at straw-headed bulbul, a full day from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We were just talking non-stop about straw-headed bulbul conservation. Even invited our friends from MNS Johor branch to come over to join in the conversation.
This is the next slide, sorry, the conservation on straw-headed bulbul.
Yeah. So I think it was a great initiative, and I think this year I understand that the Nature Society plans to, continue this work on straw-headed bulbul. So I can imagine there'll be some exciting updates coming up ahead from our colleagues in the society. Yeah.
I want to record our thanks to two ladies from Johor, like Ping and Belinda, big supporters of bird race. Unfortunately, this year they can't come over to join us at the bird race. Yeah. Belinda, thank you. Maybe this year, this November, you send more teams from Johor to come over.
Yeah, and the other thing I must not forget is that a lot of this work was driven by the outgoing chairman of the NSS Bird Group, Kim Chua. I don't know if he's on this call, but he's been really the I say the driving force in leading the bird race from these 2 or 3 consecutive years, and making the straw-headed bulbul workshop a reality. Yeah. So I see that there's a ramping up of efforts and also expanding on the regional dimension, reaching out to regional partners, and also, ramping up the work to get the people in the public to be interested. Yeah. Something that I think many of us can be quite proud of. And we would also expect to see 2021 be consumed by straw-headed bulbuls.
Yeah. If you look at the picture of the 31st bird race, there's Belinda and Naiping on the front. Is that correct? The two of them here?
Yeah.
Right in the front?
Seems like
yeah. It. Now that I realize. Thank you. Okay, Ding Li, this is the slide that you're talking about on the straw-headed bulbul workshop, where we actually do a lot of the conservation on the species conservation, and also the exhibition on the endangered birds and outreach. Take it up.
Yeah, so just to give a bit of context, I'll just ping pong in the sense that I'm representing BirdLife and also representing NSS. One of the objectives, one of the key priorities of BirdLife is to strengthen regional engagement with all the BirdLife partners in Asia. And at least from the NSS point of view, we have got a few really high common shared priorities. I think without a doubt, it's the one top priority for Singapore is the straw-headed bulbul, and it's one bird that we are trying to get the government of Singapore to be more interested in and formalize the conservation processes for the bird. So in 2019, we have the workshop that I've mentioned previously, where we basically try to bring together all the key stakeholders to come to the table to share their knowledge. But of course, with the intention that over time, we want to pull that knowledge together and pull the collective brain power of all these people together to draft sketches for what we can think of as a long-term conservation plan. We don't want the straw-headed bulbul conservation to be on and off, like you want to do, then do, don't want to do, then don't do. We want it to be more formalized and structured. So the straw-headed bulbul workshop has happened, and we are now trying to formalize an action plan. So in about a year from now, we would have a formalized document that has strong support from both the NGO sector and the government, from which we then can be used as some sort of a blueprint to guide that conservation process. Yeah. So alongside that, we are constantly pushing out all these outreach activities, you know, having photograph exhibitions. Last year we had a pretty big one. Oh, sorry, not last year. It's already 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had a pretty big photographic exhibition focused on threatened species in Singapore. And I think there are some other activities planned this year to strengthen that engagement with the Nature Society, the National Parks Board, to get them involved in the straw-headed bulbul. Yeah, I think it's a remarkable story of a bird that, you know, you wouldn't expect that much of the world population to be in Singapore 20 years ago. It was still quite rare in the 90s, but now the population has grown quite rapidly. And one of our colleagues from the university, NUS, who did a study recently, found that the population has increased again since our last estimate in 2017. So the signs are very good. And added to that is that, you know, many of the protected areas are quite compact and easy to patrol. So we don't have the, you know, kind of issues of encroachment like you might see in some parts of Sumatra, you know. So it's an exciting project that is developing. And I think Alan, myself, or Kim Chua would be able to provide some exciting updates maybe in a year from now. Yeah. So
Great stuff.
Pass back to you, Alan.
Okay, next one. Okay, that's the end of the activities for I'll say the boring stuff. Now we do a bit of the birds of Singapore, birding in Singapore. This is a map, a recent map actually of the green cover of forest cover in Singapore. You'll see that we have this green patch is the central forest. We have the western part, which is forested, but this is all under military use. It's also a catchment forest, but we can't do any birding there. Then we have the green island of Ubin, which is across Malaysia. And this is an island where all the Malaysian species escape from Malaysia. They take refuge here. So we get a lot of new birds coming in from Malaysia, like the red and black and red broadbill and all this stuff coming in from Malaysia. Then the island here, green patch is Tekong, is another military training area which we can't touch. On the right hand side, you'll see a list of 4 nature reserves in Singapore. A nature reserve is such that they're not supposed to do any development. It's gazetted, but of course it can be changed by a stroke of a pen in Parliament. But at the moment, we are okay. So the first one, as I mentioned, the central catchment, which is actually our main secondary forest, mature secondary forest or forest birding. We have Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve, which is here, the green patch. It's our first wetland reserve. This is our success story, which I will touch on later. Then we have the Bukit Timah Hill. I think it's here, right in the middle. This Bukit Timah Hill was being separated by a highway. It was originally connected to the nature reserve, but now it's separated. It's the only, or not the only, the biggest patch of primary forest left in Singapore. We still have a few remnants in the central catchment and Botanic Gardens, but this one is a whole hill. But the hill is actually not a big hill. I mean, compared to Malaysia, it's only 163 meters high. So it's a very small little hill, but nevertheless, we are very proud of this little hill. We always say that, you know, if you're living in town, you can get to a primary forest within 20 minutes and then enjoy the primary forest. The other nature reserve is right at the bottom, the Labrador Nature Reserve. This one is more of a coastal hill forest with some very unique plants and, you know, vegetation. So that is another place where we, you know, becoming a nature reserve. Not so much birds, but life here. Birding hotspots. First one is the Kranji Marshes. I think a lot of Belinda and some of the Malaysian birders, we hosted one of the visits there. Kranji Marshes is actually very close to the Kranji Reservoir. It's our biggest wetland in Singapore. We have Pulau Ubin, of course. We have Pasir Ris Park, which is here. This is Pasir Ris Park. I can't see my own. Hang a minute. I can't. Got to change this to a bit different. Hang a minute. Okay. Botanic Gardens is somewhere around here, which is quite good for birding nowadays. Getting more and more birds. Marshes Park is here, across from Ubin. And because of the proximity, they got a lot of forest species coming into this park. So this park is a very good park. The Southern Ridges is a collective name for a hill forest that we have right at the bottom of Singapore, over here, starting from Mount Faber all the way to Cambridge. And the government has actually connected the whole hill, all a series of hills here. You can actually walk from one end to the other end. And it's now very popular, spot for the people to walk. And Jurong Lake Gardens, somewhere around here. The government also has done some renovation work. So now the place is now very rich in bird life as well. A lot of funny birds coming in. I think the last time we had I think it was a pike. I think we always had a pike stilt down there, but actually it's not a pike stilt. Okay, so this is the, it's not exhaustive list. These are one of our main birding hotspots. So if anybody want to come to Singapore for one day, they can actually go and visit all these places if they want to. It can be done. Okay, this is a photo taken from the 47th floor of a housing block flat in Queenstown. Queenstown is actually in the southern part of Singapore, so we are looking north. And if you look at this photo, actually we have a very green island. I mean, like, this is almost in the middle of Singapore, but if you look down, of course, you will see fragmentation and all that, but overall, I think we have to pat ourselves back that, we do keep some of our trees and forest cover. On the right-hand side is where the Botanic Garden is. Over here, I think, is the Dempsey Hill area where we have a lot of fancy restaurants hidden inside. This used to be a British base, I think, with all the old, old barracks and all that. It's converted into a high-end restaurant area. Yeah, you can dine in the forest environment. And beyond this place over here, the whole stretch is our central catchment forest, right across. So this is looking north towards Johor. I put a remark here saying 100 birds a day. What I'm trying to say is that the unique part about birding in Singapore is you can get to any spot within 15 to 30 minutes. You can actually drive from one end of Singapore to another end in 1 hour. So very compact island, and you can go to any site just like that. You don't have to waste time driving around. So if you are birding, or if you are sort of coming here for a business and you just take one day, get a guide, come in November, October, and you should be able to get 100 species in one day. Ding Li, what's your record in one day?
In maybe about 120, but that's a long time ago.
I think Kim Seng wrote a book, or
He
something.
did he did a big year, right? Kim Seng did and recorded everything.
He wrote an article saying that how he managed to do 100 plus days or something, 100 plus species in the year. But anyway, for a big year, this year, birder called Oliver Tan.
I think he broke a record, right?
He broke the record of how much? 179, 199. I can't remember now. 179?
270, right?
279.
Over the whole year, yeah. But you're talking about for single day high, I think it was in the 90s or the 80s where you could get 150 birds a day in one day.
Yeah.
The good old days, lah. And now we are the bad new days.
But during the bird race in the old days, Subraj used to get 146 birds in 24 hours.
Yeah. Around there, that range, 140 to 150. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only difference in birding in Singapore, is that you can get to sites. In fact, I think after I mentioned about one site, you can actually bird, with just stepping out of the car. Okay, I'll go through a few of our birding sites just to get a flavor of what it's like, birding in Singapore. MParks has been very generous. They built this 6-7-story tower right in the middle of our catchment forest. And you can actually, unfortunately it takes about, I don't know, half an hour to walk in there. But once you're there, you can actually stand up on the tower and just bird watch. You don't have to go anymore, doesn't have to do any more walking around. And for me, it's actually one of the best place to do forest birding. And one of our birders, Francis Yap, I'm not sure you'll know him. I think most of you may know him. He spends a lot of mornings there before work. He'll go there at 7 in the morning and stay at about 9 o'clock. And for his effort, he have recorded a few new species of Singapore. I think he got a black and white boo-boo, which is also difficult to find in Panti. He's got a large wood strike there, new to Singapore. I think he also got the flycatcher, one of the flycatcher strikes. I think the black wing. I think is it Ding Li black wing in it?
I think it's black wing. Yeah.
Yeah, black wing. Yeah. So yeah, this place is magical if you get there right time. Anything to add on this one, Ding?
I think it's a brilliant piece of spot for birding. We had in the old days, we also had little green pigeon there, right? And little green pigeon and thick-billed spine hunter.
Yeah, this is another view of the matured secondary forest that we have. This is actually a log forest, meaning that I think the old days, Raffles times, after they clear the forest, they have plantation, and then after the plantation, they leave it alone, and this is a result of 100 plus years of growth in.
Yeah. Another special bird would be chestnut-bellied magoha. I think it's quite a regular bird here. In general, chestnut-bellied magoha is got quite a strange trend, right? In the Malay Peninsula, it's very easy to see in the southern half of it, so Johor, Singapore. But the further north you go, the less and less of them around.
Correct.
By Taman Negara latitude, they are not so common anymore. So this area, by some local lingo, they call it bao jia for chestnut-bellied magoha.
Correct. Yeah. Pasir Ris Park, I would say that this is one of our top nature parks for birding. The reasons being, it's got mangrove, it's got water edge, seas, beachside. They got this big forest of rain trees, and it's one of the best places to get to see 3 hours: the spotted wood, the buffy, and the Sundar Scops owl. And I think recently there's one mangrove pitta that is now hiding in the mangrove somewhere. So yes, this is one of the, and it's very near Changi. So a lot of birders, I think somebody like Peter Erickson, I think he had a 4-hour stopover in Changi. And he just take a taxi out to this place in 5 minutes and do his birding and then go back to the airport. The next one will be our Singapore Botanic Gardens. This is the Eco Lake. The Botanic Gardens has recently been actually very birdy. And I think the reason is because they have now a lot of team gardens or team sort of spots where they plant all kinds of trees that attracts butterflies, that attracts moths, and then in turn they attracts all these rare flycatchers like tiaga, Japanese, blue and white, narcissus. In fact, last month we had our first male narcissus flycatcher in the gardens. It's a fantastic place. Ding Li?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's the one of the places that I started bird watching in Singapore a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's so close to the what you call the shopping area. In fact, if you are living in a hotel in Orchard Road, you can actually walk there if you want to. So it's a prime piece of real estate. And recently we got our is it heritage UNESCO heritage?
Oh yeah, of course, UNESCO heritage site. Yeah. I think the bird list is 150 species now, right? More 150.
Yeah, correct. It's our first heritage UNESCO heritage site. Okay, now I go back from the forest. We go to the wetland. This is a picture of Chek Jama in Pulau Ubin. This place was almost reclaimed. The contractors have, actually the government has signed contracts to reclaim this place, but then somebody went and found a lot of this marine life, and because of public petition and all that, the government actually changed their mind and decided to conserve it. So now it's a park. It's not protected yet, but thankfully, because this is where David Lee found the first record of a little stin, and this is a place where we also can see the Chinese egret. Really?
Yeah, regular. I think almost regular.
Yeah,
Quite.
it's a good
Probably
place
the best
now.
place. The best place I would say right now for Chinese
Correct,
egret.
correct. Either this one or the reclaimed at Tekong, which we cannot go.
Yeah. So this would be the best for now. Yeah, up to 2 birds on some years. Yeah, up to 2 birds.
This little this mountain here, conical shaped mountain, doesn't belong to Singapore. Anybody want to know? Guess. This is Johor. This whole coast is Johor, and this is Pengarang. I don't know anybody go there and do birding or not, but we tried once to go there and check around, but we can't get onto the top of Pengarang. This is in Johor. So it was like information. This is the Yishun Dam or Seletar Dam up in the north. On this side, on the left is Pasir Gudang. This up, the whole water here is the Straits of Johor. And this little patch of mud flat actually is quite surprisingly a fantastic place for some of the early shorebirds like the lesser sand plovers that come in. So on the right hand side is the road, which is actually the dam itself. And you can actually park your car on a Sunday, and then you walk down the slope and you can do bird watching, or you can just do bird watching in the car if it's a low tide. So this is one of the few places where we actually just go there and don't have to walk to the site to do bird watching. Really?
Haven't been there for a while, but I think one of the key highlight for the site that I recall many years ago was the Oriental Plover.
Yes.
Oriental Plover, yeah. I used to be the AWC counter for this site 20 years ago.
I think the Oriental Plover has been seen here for a few times, few records.
Yeah,
I've seen it once here, but before that, somebody has seen it here before. Presently, there is over here, there is a black-capped kingfisher that's wintering now. So a lot of birders are now, climbing there to scope and take photograph of the black-capped kingfisher. And over here, I remember there was a dead tree where somebody found the armor falcon.
Oh, yes.
Long time ago.
Yeah. But I think it's one of the top 5 sites for shorebirds in the country.
Okay. Sungai Buloh, our premier wetland, a success story for NSS because we fought for this site to get conserved. I think it was Richard Hale, one of the members who found this a lot of birds here, and then we submitted a proposal. We got the deputy prime minister go there. We got a president to go there, and then when they visit, a lot of birds got seen. So in the end, we got our site. So very fortunate. But this is actually a high tide roost, meaning that it's like Kappa. The birds are feeding outside in Mandai, and when the high tide comes, the birds will come back into this dry ponds here to roost. It's now part of our East Asia Australasian Flyway partnership or something like that.
Yeah, it's Singapore's only flyway site in the partnership. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it's part of the Asian Heritage Park as well. So this is the same pond, but on the left hand side, where you see all these birds are roosting on this mud banks and all that. They put this bund here, primarily for the staff to do bird misting,
misstanding. Yeah.
They conduct it at night. This month, was it this month the gut well came? I can't remember. Early this month?
I think it was last year. I think it was December, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's one duck came to Sungai Buloh after 30 over years.
A flock, is that correct? A flock.
A flock, okay,
Yeah.
5 of them. But the thing is that they stayed only for 1 hour. I didn't go. Did you go?
I didn't go, I was working.
Okay, I was sleeping.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, yeah.
Okay. Okay, Kranji Marshes, our largest freshwater wetland in Singapore. It's not actually protected, but it's gonna be, hopefully it will be protected. We used to manage this place before and under NSS, but in the end, it's too much for us. So in the end, we gave it back to the authorities. URA spent a lot of money, and now they created a lot of ponds and becoming one of our nature sites. It's famous for the black-backed swamp hen, but unfortunately, with our last 2 years, we don't seem to be able to find them. Ding Li, what happened?
That's a good question. No one knows the answer, but the decline is real. I think you have the rate data, book data, where we recently did some calculation. The decline is about 60%. Yeah.
And prior to that, they had a photo of a family. So they actually nested there, but now, they disappeared. But still, luckily, we still get more hens there. Sometimes we get some ducks here. Of course, a good small flock of red water lapwings. Gardens by the Bay, I would like to always say that this is our $1 billion garden. Yeah, that's what the government spent on. I mean, they said they spent $1 billion to create a garden on a reclaimed land. But having said that, I was quite impressed that this place now turned out to be a very birdy place. I think a lot of thanks to go to the CEO of MParks, Mr. Kenneth. I think he did a lot of study and planted, the way the trees are planted and the type of vegetation and all that. So now we're getting birds like black bittern, common kingfisher, and all kinds of rare stuff coming in. And the other thing is it's very close to the CBD. In fact, you can actually park your car and walk 5 steps, and you can start shooting the common kingfisher at a pond. So I don't know any place in the world that you can actually get flying shots of, feeding shots of common kingfisher straight out from the car. You've been there for a long time, right, Ding Li?
I haven't been there for a while. Yeah, but I think the other good place is the other good bird here is the lesser tree ducks, right? They do come here quite regularly. Yeah. I think that's
but
quite.
They got black bitterns. They had jacana once over there as well.
Yeah, and then I think for the attention of shorebird lovers, I am aware there are some shorebird lovers on the talk. The gardens is broken into 2 parts, right? There's Gardens East and then the main gardens. The Gardens East side has a seawall, and the seawall there has if I'm not wrong, at least 3 pairs of Malaysian plover.
Yeah.
So basically, you can walk into the gardens and walk over to the seawall and put up your telescope. And I think within 30 seconds, you will see a Malaysian plover walking around. Yeah. So it's probably one of the best areas to see a Malaysian plover in the city area. Yeah.
Correct. And the seawall is actually very close to this place. This is actually the seawall's on the right hand side. This is the open grassland in a place called Marina East. It's actually very close to where Ding Li was mentioning about. From here, you can actually walk to the Gardens by the Bay as well. It's connected. In December this year, we had a lot of rain. I think Johor was flooded, or Malaysia was flooded. Singapore was still flooded. But the good thing about our flooding is that it created a wetland. And because of this wetland, we end up with Palian's crake, watercocks, grey-headed lapwing, jacanas, and a host of other pond herons and all that. So it turned out to be a very instant wetland for a lot of birders in Singapore. Did you go and check the grey-headed lapwing?
No, I didn't. But I did go and see the Malaysian plover 2 or 3 times. Yeah, behind this. So for the interest of our friends, I know some of our colleagues are doing work on Malaysian plover. Just behind this site, the seawall, there's a regular. I think of it as a high tide roost lah. So we always have a flock of 4 or 5 different kinds of plovers on the roost. So there's Malaysian, there is white-faced plover. Usually there will be a few white-faced plover around. And the usual Etrifrons, Mongolian plover. Maybe sometimes you get a greater sand plover and little ring plover.
Okay.
Quite good for plovers also, yeah. But of course, in this wetland, you've got the lapwings and all that, yeah.
Okay. So we now go to some of the birds that I mentioned in Singapore. Snapshot of what's happening here. We have about 414 species, 54 families. We used to have 53, but recently we had the Eponus. Do you remember?
Oh, that was last year, right?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, last year.
Richard White.
Richard White's
So we added one more family. 150 breeding residents. So the rest are all we considered as visitors, breeding, non-breeding, winter visitors, migrants, and all that stuff. 30 of them of the list is introduced, and we had one breeding migrant, which is the blue-throated bee-eater. Woody, I think we are running out of time. I mean, we're a bit slow now. Now it's 1 o'clock, and I think we just about finished half. Do we end, hurry up?
Yes, we need to increase the speed a bit,
okay.
and then maybe move on to conservation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are looking at the birds. I mentioned 12 species which are highlighted that you can find in Singapore. Malaysian night heron. These are taken in Botanic Gardens. Again, not very shy. Quite approachable. The red crag, another species which is hard to find even in Thailand. Malaysia, I don't know where to find this. Ding Li, anywhere?
I think it's in some of the secondary woodland in Kuala Lumpur. Okay. It's also in Kuching, in some of the very small forest patches in Kuching. Yeah.
We had a nesting record, the first nesting record in Botanic Gardens. Great Bay Heron, another species which is difficult to find in Malaysia because I think you need to go to the islands, the rocky islands to find this. But now in Singapore, they're all over the shop.
So Alan, just to jump on the great blue heron, I wasn't aware of many great blue heron sightings in Peninsula recently. So usually in Borneo State, we get it in Darun Valley, up the Sagama River. But in Peninsula, I think Johor is the best place to see it right now. I mean, I think there was one on Mersing a couple of years ago, and the birds that are on the border, on the Johor Straits, they could sometimes go into the Malaysian side or the Singapore side. So I call them the transboundary herons. But I believe they may make their, foraging areas to include areas like Tanjung Piai. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sungai Buloh birds wander to the far side of Danga or Tanjung Piai.
Yeah, it's also our biggest bird in Singapore.
No. Already beaten.
Which one?
By adjutant stock.
Oh, adjutant stock. Okay. The Jazz Bazaar. Somebody mentioned they have one. Is it Mark who mentioned they have one in Bukit Tinggi?
I think there was one in Bukit Tinggi recently.
Yeah. We have this every year. So actually, there's one at the moment wintering in this Changi Business Park. Quite easy to to see. This one. We become our lapsap hour. It's just about everywhere now. This is actually taken at the car park at the Botanic Gardens Visitor Center. They're roosting right on top of the car park. I don't know in Malaysia. I think Malaysia also quite common. I think.
Yeah, quite common in Malaysia. Yeah.
This one no. You talk about this, the Luchington?
Well, Aleutian is pretty interesting in the sense that, it's one of those few birds that breeds in Alaska and then migrates through the peninsula. Yeah, so I think in recent years, it was the pelagic surveys, right, that found quite a lot of them wintering in the sea between Indonesia and Singapore.
Yeah, I think this is the southernmost, for this bird now.
Yeah.
Go into Malacca Straits at all?
I don't know whether they got it from the pelagic of Kedah. Yeah. Tanjung Dawai pelagic, I think, also got Aleutian. Yeah.
This one is in the breeding plumage. The green imperial pigeon, at one stage you only can find in Tokong, but now they also spread out into the Pasir Ris Park. I think because of this salam tree. I think this tree is a favorite tree of all the pigeons.
Yeah, salam trees.
Yeah. So yeah, we also actually had a record of breeding record in Owyong some years back. But remember, we went there and looked for it nearly once.
That was about quite a long time ago. 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, quite a long time
10 years
ago.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. The favorite for a lot of photographers, blue-winged pitta. I'm not sure in Malaysia whether this is a common species or not for them.
I'm aware that there's a breeding of blue-winged pitta up to the latitude of central Pahang, Taman Negara area. But I think
we had our first record of the breeding.
Between Pahang and Singapore, there's no record of breeding as far as I remember. Yeah, I think some of our experts on the panel can comment as well. But the breeding in Singapore is quite surprising, I thought.
Yeah, true. Yep. Yeah, I think that one those who want to know more about that one, you can go and read up the paper by Albert Lowe in the Birding Asia. I think he wrote a big article on that one. Talking about pitta, 2 years ago, a year ago, we had our first fairy pitta in Singapore in the forest. Malaysia only Borneo has a fairy pitta in it.
I think so far Sabah Sarawak, yeah. But okay. I think I give you 5 years and someone's going to find it in the East Coast states like Terengganu.
Okay. Somebody got to look for it.
Yeah, got to dig. But monsoon are very difficult also.
Yeah. Okay, another bird that can be found quite easily in our mangrove is the copper-throated sunbird. At the moment, there is one that is displaying in the mangrove in Sungai Buloh. If you go to our Facebook, every day there's somebody posting one of this copper-throated sunbird. It's so close.
They're doing very well. They're doing very well. Yeah.
Your favorite bird, green leaf bird, Ding Li.
Yeah, one of the recently declared as globally endangered because the population in Indonesia is not looking very good. So I think we have a important job, to protect this bird in Malaysia and Singapore. Seems to be still reasonably common in the peninsula, in Borneo states and Singapore. But like I say, it's quite popular in the pet trade in Java. So I would imagine that there will be more and more transboundary smuggling, of birds caught here in Malaysia I remember last week there was a confiscation of a lot of shamas and magpie robin. So it's just a greater green leaf bird or a blue winged leaf bird. The wing looks very blue.
No, look at the bill. It's a and the face.
Oh, is it sub-adult? Is it maybe a sub-adult?
Yeah, maybe sub-adult. Yeah.
Sub-adult. Yeah.
Yeah, the lesser green is harder to find in Singapore. But this guy, if you go to this dairy farm, when this white mulberry tree is fruiting, they got these white berries. Every day, this guy will be out feeding. So just go and wait. They'll see him. Okay, the last bird that I got this show is the straw-headed bulbul. This is taken in the Hindhede Park, which is the buffer park next to Bukit Timah. I think Ding Li has spoken a lot about this bird. So if anybody Malaysians want to come and take photograph and get nice shots of this one, just go to Hindhede and wait at the one of the playground down there.
Yeah, I think this is a bird that is increasing conservation concern in Malaysia. We are finding that the bird seems to be declining.
Hi.
Somebody talking?
Maybe it was accidental. Yeah.
Okay. Karen, Dilly.
Yeah, so this is a bird that I think many of our friends and colleagues in Malaysia would agree that the bird is something to watch out for, because it seems that, the place that I used to go and see it a lot in Frim, I used to go birding in Frim a lot. It doesn't seem to be there for whatever reason. It seems to have gone, missing from many places in the peninsula. So it could be that it's under threat from poachers. The only place I remember that is still in good numbers will be the Tembeling River on the eastern flank of Taman Negara. So increasing conservation concern for friends to look out for in terms of looking out for where the key numbers are and where the poaching might be happening. Yeah. The other place I know it's still in is the Endau. There's still a few birds I'm aware of in Endau.
Until today, I still don't know how I managed to take this photo, honestly. it's totally too over underexposed. But I don't know how with the technology today you managed to get this color back again. Okay, Woody, we only have another 20 species to go. So if I can take half an hour, we should finish at 3:30 for this birds. Is that okay, Woody?
Maybe we have to cut it there because it's running out of time.
So
yeah.
can we do the conservation?
Alan, I'll tell you what. Why don't you quickly run through each of these, but and then I'll take over from there, lah.
Yeah, but we don't no time already.
Okay. Can.
So shall we do the conservation, and then if got time, then we do this. If not, we do the conservation first.
No problem. I have a lot of slides to cover.
Thanks.
So we jump to the conservation now.
Yep, sounds good. So I will share screen now.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I think you need to
Okay. Stop.
Can. Yep. Can. Thank you. So I think my screen should be on the big screen now. Am I even looking at the correct slide? Okay, cool. So Vuti, can you see my screen right now?
Yep, all good.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll try to keep it short so that we can find some time to talk about the shorebirds if possible. Okay, so I'm going to focus, like Vuti mentioned, my presentation on conservation, and that's part of my job as well. So it's something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I feel quite strongly about, So I'll just give you the audience, the floor here, a bit of understanding of where we are in terms of migratory bird conservation. I mean, building on to what Alan has covered, I think Alan has really given you a very good overview of the bird watching sites in Singapore, plus, of course, the conservation work that the Nature Society is doing. What I want to talk a little bit more about, building on from what he has mentioned, is why is Southeast Asia such an important part of the world for conserving migratory birds, and then I'll zoom into Malaysia and explain a little bit about where Malaysia sits in the bigger scheme of things in this flyway, the East Asian Australasian flyway, and then share a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing, collaborations with the MNS in Penang, in Sarawak, for example. So I think that it gives you a pretty general overview of your understanding of migratory birds in this part of the world. So I think some big picture things to give you a bigger understanding of where Asia is for conservation. I mean, a lot of us, we are very, consumed by bird watching, and we're very focused on our local patches or the places that we go to a lot for birding, but where do we sit in this region? How important is Asia for conservation? And as a person who works in the regional big scheme of things, I tend to think about these things very frequently. So broadly in Asia, it's a great continent for bird conservation and bird diversity in general. We have done some calculations here and there and crunch out some numbers. And we know that Asia is very important. 1 in 3 species of birds on the planet, about 3,500 species. This number should be higher now because, every now and then birds are split and you have new species discovered all over the place. So 3,000 over species in Asia, but most of these bird species are actually found in Southeast Asia, if you think about it. That's where all your tropical forests is, that's where all your mangroves are. And of the birds in the world, as far as birds that are threatened, we know that as of this point in time, about 1,400 odd species are considered as globally threatened with extinction. But how many of these actually is from Asia? And we did the math again, and we know that about 429 to 430 species of all the world's threatened birds are in Asia. So if you do some basic fractions, that's about 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 of the world's threatened species are in Asia. And that again tells us how important Asia is for conservation of migratory birds in particular, and more broadly, conservation of the world's bird species. Southeast Asia, that's where we are right now. It's not a very large part of Asia. If you go and do math again, which is something I like to do, calculations here and there, Southeast Asia is like one small region of Asia. It's not even half the size of China. But Southeast Asia is obviously the most important part of Asia for biodiversity in general, and bird diversity in particular. At last count, we have more than 2,000 600 species of birds in Asia. So previous slide, I talked about how many birds we have in whole continent. Whole continent, we have 3,000 over. Southeast Asia have 2,600. So if you do a bit of simple math, that's again two-thirds of the bird diversity of Asia is packed into Southeast Asia, into everywhere from Myanmar to Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. So again, Southeast Asia from the global point of view is a very important part of the world for conservation. And when you talk to people from other parts of the world next time, this is something that people from Southeast Asian countries should be aware of and be proud of. When you talk to the Americans or the Europeans or the Australians, we know we have some of the highest bird diversity on the planet. And this is something that also adds on to our added responsibility for conserving bird life. What about migratory birds? So I'm moving narrower and narrower. I start by talking about the bigger picture of birds in Asia. How many migratory birds are there in Asia? Nobody's actually done this count until I had to, do this for a report. And I went through every species of bird on the continent, and we estimate that around 600 species of migratory birds are found in Asia. So if you think about that, about 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 birds that you see in Asia are migratory species. And some of these migratory species could be what we will call a long-distance migrant. Long-distance migrants literally meaning that they have to fly very, very long distances to get from the places that they breed, the places that they, raise their chicks, lay eggs, and nest, to the places that they will go to escape the northern winter. So these are what we will call long-distance migrant if they, fly continental distances. In Malaysia, most, if not all, the shorebird species in Malaysia are considered as long-distance migrants. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget that even all these thousands and thousands of honey buzzards that you get in Malacca every year during the Raptor Count, these are also long-distance migrants. How do we know? We have the science to show that. Our colleagues in Japan have done the tracking many years ago, and some of the people in this team right now, Kim Chai, our regional raptor expert, will be very well aware of this. Our colleagues in Japan, they put these transmitters to the back of honey buzzards, and then the transmitter send us a live signal. So wherever the honey buzzard go, we know where it's flying to. And when they summarize all this data, it shows that many of these honey buzzards that we're getting in Malaysia are actually coming from the northern part of Honshu, which is the main island of Japan. To get from Honshu to Malaysia, that's a huge distance, 6,000 kilometers one way. So that pretty much put things into perspective, what makes a long distance migrant is. But at the same time, we have a lot of these birds we will call a short distance migrant as well. I'm not sure how familiar we are all with the short distance migrants, but quite a number of the species that we get in Malaysia are short distance migrants. They are not traveling as far as, honey buzzard or the shorebirds from the northern part of Russia. These are migratory birds that come from Southeast Asia. So there are a lot of migratory birds that breed in the mountains of Thailand, in Laos, in Cambodia. And these birds, they migrate to the peninsula. These birds, they don't fly more than 1,000-2,000 kilometers. These are what we call short distance migrants. Think of things like hooded pita, blue-winged pita, crow-billed drongo. These are short distance migrants. In Asia, we have 2 major migratory flyways, all right? So globally, we have, depending on who you talk to, depending on which expert you talk to, we have about 8 to 10 so-called migratory flyways. Asia has 2 of the biggest of the world's migratory flyways by virtue of the fact that Asia also has the largest landmass of any continent. So a lot of you are very familiar with this thing, very hard to pronounce, East Asian Australasian Flyway. This is the flyway that Malaysia sits within, the biggest flyway in the world. It connects a huge part of Russia with almost all of Southeast Asia, and then connecting forward to Australia and New Zealand, and even some of the Pacific islands like Solomon's are part of this flyway. But maybe less familiar to many of us is the flyway that connects India, Sri Lanka, Nepal with Siberia. And that is for geographic reasons, we call it the Central Asian Flyway because it is in the middle part of Asia. So broadly, we have 2 major flyways in this part of the world. And one of the things that we don't think about when we think about migratory birds is that, what is really making them very amazing is that these migratory birds are incredibly, they are linking up these different ecosystems in Asia. I mean, when we look at a migratory bird, we think of a migratory bird as, okay, the bird is there, it came from somewhere. I don't know where the somewhere is, but I know the bird came from some far places. But when you look at it from the big picture continental point of view, these birds are actually moving in the billions from Siberia to Malaysia, Indonesia. So if you look at it from an ecological point of view, they are actually connecting major ecosystems. The birds are moving nutrients and biomass from Siberia to Malaysia, to Siberia to Malaysia, and has been doing that for millions of years. So I think it's one of the great phenomena of the natural world on the planet that we should all try our best to conserve. So East Asia Australasian Flyway, at a glance, what is it? Where is it? And what part of the world does it connect? I think a lot of you are very familiar with this flyway. You've seen it in a lot of presentations, maybe last year. So I won't talk too much about the regions it connect. The map shows it very clearly. But what I want to pay attention is that this flyway is at the same time, the biggest flyway. I've said it many times, but this is also the most threatened flyways because this is the most crowded part of the planet. If you calculate human population, this is where most of the human beings in the world are. I think along the East Asian Australasian Flyway, you have about a third of the global humanity concentrated here. Mostly, of course, people in Japan, China, Korea. That adds a lot of huge cities on this flyway, which makes the migration of many birds difficult because the birds have to pass through all these big cities to get to the tropics and Australia. This is also the most threatened flyways. When we count in terms of how many migratory species are there in the world's flyways, right? I compare our flyway with the Central Asian flyway, with the African flyway, with the American flyways. This one is the worst in terms of conservation problems. 20 species are considered as threatened. 20 waterbird species only. I'm talking about waterbirds. I'm not even talking about the land birds like warblers and all that. So this is the most threatened of the world's flyway. And obviously where Malaysia sits, Malaysia is a very important part of the flyway. We are right in the middle of the flyway. This is the part of the flyway where many birds are passing through going onwards to Indonesia. But this is also a part of the flyway where many migratory birds are spending their winter here. For those of you who do your AWCs in various parts of Johor, Penang, Kedah, wherever, you will see throughout midwinter, there are many migratory birds in Malaysian territory. So Malaysia is a very important country for migratory birds from 2 points of view, as a wintering area and as a staging site for birds going into Sumatra, going into Australia, for example. I could give you a story of my friend who does bird surveys in Medan in Sumatra, and he sees in the morning birds are crossing the Malacca Straits. Where did they come from? They can only have come from Peninsular Malaysia to have made that 50 kilometers journey across the Malacca Straits. So again, in perspective, the East Asian Australasian Flyway is the most threatened of the world's flyway. 61 species considered as threatened or near threatened, and many of these are waterbirds. Malaysia's role and position in the flyway, I mentioned briefly earlier on, we are part of on a major corridor. Many birds are stopping over here. Many birds are passing on over to Australia. From the point of view of shorebirds, we are very important. Some of the most threatened species of waterbirds in this flyway come to Malaysia and spend their wintering period within Malaysian territory. Not to forget also the many thousands of small birds that we don't tend to think about. The land birds, which I'm very interested in, in terms of conservation, they don't really get as much attention as the waterbirds. But the land birds, many thousands of them pass through Malaysia as well. I don't know if you recall, for those of you who are been birding for many years, you might remember reading reports from the old days by David Wells. David Wells, the authority on birds of Malaysia, did lots of these very exciting studies in Fraser's Hill, in the 60s and the 70s. David Wells, Jeffrey Davison, they did all these mist netting studies, during nights where they calculated that there'll be a lot of migratory birds passing through Fraser's Hill. So they put up mist nets at some of these areas where there are very bright spotlights. That migratory birds get attracted to the light at night, and they mist netted thousands and thousands of Siberian blue robins and pitas, even a Mars finfoot, caught up in Fraser's Hill, tufted duck caught up in Fraser's Hill. So that shows us how important Malaysia is as a country for migratory birds, and especially the Titi Wangsa range, which is a major corridor for a lot of these forest birds moving down the peninsula. Yeah, but going across the Borneo side of Malaysia, also very important. You have got some of the most important sites for some of this flyway's most threatened shorebirds, in Sarawak, for example. I think many years ago in 2013, there was a major survey of the entire Sarawak coast. So our friends from Sarawak will be familiar about the Pan Sarawak Coast Survey. And of course, we know Bakok Puntau Bay very well. It's one of the premier sites for shorebirds and the only East Asian Australasian flyway site in the country. But there are also many of these major sites further up the Sarawak coast. And Puntau Bay, for example, we all know is to be the top site in the country for Far East curlew. As of last week, I think more than 600 individuals was counted there wintering showing that this is a very important place for the species in Southeast Asia. Before that, a lot of people assumed that all Far East curlews will go to Australia and nothing left in between, no? But we are beginning to find that Malaysia, Indonesia are very important countries for Far Eastern curlew. Yeah, sorry, it's a very bad cartoon here. So among the migratory birds that we should pay more attention to because they are threatened for whatever reason, right? That comes to Malaysian territory very frequently. These are the 4 important birds that you should watch out for when you're doing your AWC. I know some of you are going to start your AWC very soon. We are always very keen to have more data about these 4 birds. These are the 4 globally threatened species that come to Malaysian coastline in regular numbers, usually and at globally significant levels. So you've got species like the great knot. Those of you who are doing surveys, for example, in Sarawak or in Penang, you will see quite large numbers of the great knot. Notman's green shank, one of the most important sites for the Notman's green shank is on the Penang coast, on the coast of Seberang Perai, where you could get double-digit figures every year, but smaller numbers trickle down to Selangor and down to Johor. We've got a Chinese egret. There are not so many Chinese egret on the peninsula as opposed to Borneo, but for those of you who are doing AWC in Borneo, you know that Chinese egret so yeah, everywhere also got Chinese egret, right? Definitely more of them than in the peninsula. And then of course, Far Eastern curlew, where this bird is known to be having a stronghold in the wintering areas in the southern part of Sarawak. So going back to Bako Pundao Bay, which I will talk a little bit more about later on in my presentation. In a nutshell, these are the key sites in the peninsula for shorebirds, but I don't think this is comprehensive. These are the places that we know as of now, and this is taken from this wonderful report compiled by our colleagues from the HQ, MNS HQ. Yap and colleagues have compiled a very detailed inventory of Malaysia's key areas for birds. For shorebirds, you know, we've got, I think, 5 important coastlines on the peninsula, but I believe that in future we'll find more places for shorebirds that are currently unknown, but maybe not necessarily higher numbers. So in a nutshell, we've got the Penang coastline, just on the mainland side of Penang, which is very important for those of us who are hardcore birders. We've been to the Penang coastline. We've seen lots and lots of birds, including good numbers of Notman's green shank. Going down to Perak side, we've got Kuala Gula. And then for many of our friends from Kuala Lumpur and Klang Valley, you know, we've got the North Central Selangor coast, which is a well-recognized important bird area. It's not so well understood as we know. There are certain parts of the North Central Selangor coast that people go more often, you know, for example, Kuala Selangor and Kapar. These are the places that many of our friends have gone there to do bird surveys over the years. But I think in recent years, they're also beginning to find places along the Selangor coast, which is not so well known in the past, but used by good numbers of migratory shorebirds, you know, in Joram, for example. And then coming right to the southern part of the Malay Peninsula, you've got the Johor coastline, you know, you've got the east and the west part. Johor is a special state. It's the only state that has a coastline on the Malacca Strait side and on the South China Sea side. And I think in recent years, teams led by MNS in Johor has found really good numbers of shorebirds on the straits, on the South China Sea side, which they are going to survey during the AWC again. This part of the coast has got, you know, good numbers of shorebirds, and this is where great knot comes, Notman's green shank comes, and other things that tend to be associated with a sandier kind of coastline like grey-tailed tattler. This is a slide that I think is quite important and I should cover, even though in the beginning I was thinking of removing it, you know, but I have to talk about the yellow sea because the yellow sea is such a big part of my work. The yellow sea is not necessarily the most familiar part of the East Asian Australasian flyway for most of our friends, but for shorebird conservation, it is the most important part of flyway, because it is technically like the middle part of the hourglass. For those of you who see how an hourglass works, all the things from the top of the hourglass have to go through that narrow constriction before it drops to the bottom. And the yellow sea is like the constriction on the hourglass. So pretty much every shorebird, I wouldn't say every one literally, but I would say 80 to 90% of the shorebirds of the whole flyway would have to move through the yellow sea on its journey to Southeast Asia and Australia. We know this by tracking data. For example, species such as the spoonbill sandpiper, which is one of the species I work with regularly. We know that almost the entire, if not the entire population, gathers at just 2 or 3 sites on the Yellow Sea coast before they start to move south and scatter into Vietnam, South China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. So the Yellow Sea is very important. And if we can conserve the Yellow Sea, we can actually secure pretty much all the populations of shorebirds moving through this region. And it is the focus of many of our bird life conservation initiatives in the recent years, including in 2019, we pushed very hard for the UNESCO to recognize the Yellow Sea for its importance, and managed to get one site, UNESCO status for one of the China coastal sites, which for those of you who ever get to go there, you'll be totally awed by the hundreds and thousands of shorebirds you could see, in 1 minute. Yeah. However, after hearing all these good stuff about our flyway, we know that there are a lot of challenges coming up ahead. There are a lot of problems that we face from the conservation point of view. We know that many shorebirds are declining all over the East Asian Australasian flyway. Some of the best evidence of this decline come from our data sets from Australia. Australian colleagues have been counting birds over the years, as well as here in Singapore, whereby Alan earlier on has spoken about the annual bird census. The annual bird census collects shorebird data from Singapore for more than 30 years, and putting the data together, we see that many of our formerly very common shorebirds have actually shown quite substantial decline. If we didn't do these numbers, we will probably not be aware of how big that decline is and how serious it is for us to take action in the short term. So many common shorebirds have declined, not to mention the rarer shorebirds. Marsh sandpiper, Pacific golden plover, even long-toed stain have suffered very big declines in Singapore. I would assume declines for most other parts of the flyway, except that nobody has yet to measure them over the long term. Pacific golden plover, I've mentioned about that as well. Some of you may at this point ask, what is the problem? What is causing these declines, right? I mean, we don't see the problem so clearly. So what is the big problem with which is driving the declines of so many of our shorebirds? And if I have to summarize that into one simple slide, the problem can be summarized into 2 points. Number one is habitat loss. Number two is hunting. Habitat loss for obvious reasons, because you see for many of our migratory waterbirds, I'm now going about a bit beyond shorebirds. I know I've been talking a lot about shorebirds, but migratory waterbirds in general, a lot of these species, from the Chinese egret to various of these gull species that we get in Southeast Asia, they really spend most of their time on the coastal areas, right? They are living in the mud flats, in the coastal marshes, in the sandy beaches. And if you think about these areas, these are the areas that are perfect for development. If I was a developer, I want to build a seafront, I want to build a port, I want to build other kinds of infrastructure on the coast, which means that the coastal wetlands that we all have are extremely vulnerable to development. When governments develop any areas, they tend to develop the easiest places, and then they move to the more difficult places. So when they have no other place to develop, then they start to chop things into the mountains. But the coast is very vulnerable, and that is why it is extremely urgent for us to look into the issue of coastal wetland loss in the region. But in many parts of Southeast Asia, we're also seeing a problem of agricultural expansion, whereby you see mass agriculture, monoculture creeping closer and closer to the coastline. You see in many parts of Southeast Asia, paddy cultivation, that means rice coming very close to the coastline. In some parts of Penang, you see palm oil going very close to the coastline as well. In Vietnam, watermelon plantations come all the way to within 50 meters of the coastline. So agriculture is another major threat. And of course, that is not all. We know that there are other threats like encroachment, and plastic pollution. In general, mud flats are in decline. One of my colleagues, Nicholas Murray, did a global review of mud flats all over the planet, and he calculated that in the last 20, 30 years, mud flats across the globe have declined. Areas where it has declined the most are the areas that you've seen in red in this map. And if you come to our part of the region on the East Asian Australasian flyway, the biggest decline have been really on the Japan, China, Korea coast, where nowadays, if you go there, you see that huge areas of the coast are reclaimed and now in concrete. Of course, we can't forget that another major threat to our shorebirds is hunting. Hunting is a huge threat to shorebirds in Southeast Asia especially. We didn't know this so well, but in recent years, BirdLife has been doing a project to understand how serious the problem of hunting is. We've been working with every single Southeast Asian partner, from Vietnam to Indonesia, and we find that there are particularly serious areas of hunting in countries such as Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar. Even in Malaysia, we are beginning to find some evidence of hunting. For those of you who frequent areas of paddy farming, you'll find that sometimes you are areas of mist nets. They put these mist nets in the paddy field to catch all kinds of birds. This picture was taken by my Vietnam colleagues in the northern part of Vietnam. A large part of the northern coast of Vietnam is affected by hunting. So people put up these nets to catch birds, and birds eventually get sold in numbers to the restaurant in Hanoi, and then they become sold as a luxury food item. So big issue of hunting in Southeast Asia. This is from Vietnam again, some from the Mekong Delta on the left. And then on the right, this is wild birds for sale as food in the markets of Myanmar. Of course, building on to what I mentioned, right, habitat loss is a big issue. Hunting is a big issue. Another issue that we know that we face in Southeast Asia is that we really don't know much about our coastlines. We think we know a lot, but actually the reality is that we don't know a lot. And we are beginning to find that the more we survey, the more we discover. So I think there's a big need for us to do more surveys on the Southeast Asian coastline. There are still many sites that remain to be discovered. I was personally involved in some of these surveys in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And wherever we survey, we will find new concentrations of shorebirds that was not recognized already as an IBA or not even known to the scientific community. Yeah. And to make things even more interesting, you know, for those of you who are into shorebird migration and tracking, recently we see more and more scientists in this region tracking the migration of shorebirds. So basically you put transmitters on the shorebird's body and you use your computer and track where these shorebirds go. I mean, this is a very simplified way of explaining things. But the remarkable thing about tracking is that you can use tracking to find new areas of wetlands that we didn't know before. So one of my colleagues in Hong Kong went to China and put all these transmitters on great knots and try to see where great knots go, you know. And they end up finding that actually a lot of the areas these great knots go on migration are totally unknown, not even to the local NGOs. You see on the map on the right side, I don't know if that's very clear for you, every spot that is white in color is an unknown site from the conservation point of view. That means not IBA, no birders go there. And we find that there are many of these spots in Philippines, in the eastern part of Borneo, all the way to Sabah, as well as to various parts of Indonesian islands like Sulawesi and Timor. So very big issues we have in terms of conservation of migratory birds. At this point in time, I think some of you may have questions, you know, why do we need to protect wetlands? Why do we need to protect shorebirds? And I know this is probably lunchtime for many of us in Singapore and Malaysia right now, but I will deliberately put a picture of a favorite food item for many people, the familiar mee udang of Penang. You know, I want to use the mee udang, and in some cases I'll use laksa to illustrate why wetlands are important. And wetlands are very important because think about it, a lot of the seafood we come from wetlands. I think a huge proportion of the seafood we come from wetlands, including some of our favorite seafood, things from prawns to clams, you know, kerang, all these things come from the wetlands. So without wetlands being preserved and kept healthy, obviously we are not going to have sustainable seafood in the long-term future. And that is not all. Wetlands also have a lot of other roles that they provide us in terms of ecosystem services. Wetlands help to protect us from tsunamis. When the sea is rough, your mangroves, your mudflats, they are there to protect your coastlines. They help you to protect you from sea level rise. At the same time, the wetlands themselves are sucking up a lot of carbon. So nowadays we try to talk about global warming, climate change, carbon dioxide becoming more and more in the atmosphere, but the wetlands are one of these major storage of what we will call blue carbon, you know, all this mud and stuff that's stuck under your mudflat. These are huge storages of carbon, and protecting the wetlands help to ensure that the carbon stay where it is and don't go into the atmosphere to cause it to warm up. So now that I mentioned threats and reasons as to why we need to protect wetlands. I know this is all very short and quick, you know, because of time constraints. I want to introduce a little bit of our bird life programs in the region. I want to talk a little bit more about our Flyways program, because this is our global program to work with all the partners of BirdLife to protect wetlands. BirdLife programs focus a lot on ground intervention. So we work a lot with our partners all over the world to work with the local people, to make sure that the local people are interested in conservation, that they play a role in conservation, and at the same time, you know, contribute to the conservation process by helping out in monitoring, in patrolling. And of course, we also want to push for the governments to recognize more protected areas in this region and all over the world. We work on a list of issues. If I have to summarize them into 5 points, point by point, we look at site-based conservation. We look at broad issues affecting migratory birds, like what I mentioned earlier on, like illegal hunting. That's one of the big issues that we are trying to deal with in the world. We also strongly believe in capacity building. So we want to get local partners and the partners of local partners to be interested and have the knowledge and the capacity to go down to the ground to protect their own wetlands. We want to make them conservationists, want to make local people becoming part of that process. So capacity building is a very big part of my job as well, the job of my colleagues in this region. Of course, we cannot forget that we need to continue with our research. We need the science to tell us where are the most important sites to protect. So research and monitoring is very important. We need the monitoring to tell us what the numbers of migratory birds are like now compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And then most of all, we need to ensure that advocacy happens. That means we want our partners to continue to talk to the governments and tell the governments what is important, what must we protect, and what can you do, how can we work together to better protect some of these wetlands. And of course, to put all things into the regional perspective, we strongly believe in international cooperation. So in Southeast Asia, we are trying our best to get partners to talk to each other, to work with each other, to share experience and knowledge, whether you are in Malaysia, Singapore, or Vietnam, Myanmar, Thailand, or further north. This is where we have flyway activities currently across this region. It's not comprehensive. There are other things that I have not included in this map, but basically things from all over the place, from Russia all the way to Australia. In Malaysia, we've had a really good project with the Kuching branch for several years. Some of you who know my colleague Rose Au would have heard a lot about this work in Bako Bundau Bay. In 2018, we started a project in Bako Bundau Bay whereby we want to build local capacity. It's being led by one of my colleagues who is probably on this call as well, Patricia. So Patricia has been on the ground working along the coast of Sarawak, not just in this part of Sarawak, but she's also working in another so-called, I call it an analog of Kappa power station. In Sarawak, we have the Sejingkat power station, which has got its own set of ash ponds, and we are finding that to be a really important high tide route for shorebirds in the South Sarawak coast. So there's this work going on in Sarawak for already 2-3 years, but of course the monitoring has gone on for a far longer time, and we hope to find a way to work with the Sarawak's forestry department to secure the long-term protection of the Bako Bundau Bay landscape, which is like I say in my earlier slides, the only flyway site recognized for Malaysia right now. So very important site, flyway site, and current focus of our engagement in Malaysia, and of course other places in the peninsula like in Penang as well as the north central Selangor coast. So for those of you who are all here on the call who have listened to the presentation by Alan and myself, a lot of you have this question at this point, what can you do? I mean, you tell me all this long story, yeah, very bad here, very bad there, everywhere bad, but people also want to know what's the action, right? So I want to summarize some of these actions that you can do yourself, play your role, do your part, as a member of the Nature Society, support the work of the society, expand outreach, expand citizen science activities. As a lot of us have friends who are not into this, are not involved in conservation, not into nature. Tell them about it and get them to be involved. That's how we can get the message across to people who are not necessarily aware of what we are doing. A lot of my friends, for your information, are not into conservation, and I always find it a point to talk to them, and using various languages to reach out to them. Not necessarily everybody knows all the science of bird migration and conservation in English. So we try to reach out to them in Bahasa, in Chinese, in Tamil, whatever, try to increase that outreach. Very importantly, and this is something that many of us can do quite easily, participate in the local research. There are many researchers working in Malaysia, support their work, share your observations with them. You see a rare shorebird, endangered species, share a record with them. They'll be happy to receive those records because it adds up to their project, and then they can use that data to inform the relevant agencies like Perlitan to tell them, where are the important sites for shorebirds. And of course, most of all, I think it's very important to continue to strong support for a lot of our citizen science initiatives. I think among the 3 key initiatives we have on the peninsula in the Raptor Count, which has been ongoing for so many years in Malacca, Negeri Sembilan. We've got the Asian waterbird census, which is happening very, very, very soon. And of course, for those of us who live in the big cities, in the urban areas, go and look at the birds in your garden. Some of these birds are probably migratory birds like Arctic warblers. Record them and share it with your local branches through the MYGB work. So I think that pretty much summarizes my presentation. I know I have a lot of content to cover, but I want to distill the key points. I could probably go on for another 2 hours, but I really hope that all our friends here, are now no longer aware of the situation in Malaysia, but also more widely across the region, and see what, by doing this work in Malaysia, are they actually contributing to wider conservation initiatives in Southeast Asia and across the Flyway. So thanks again to Vuti and the Negeri Sembilan Malacca branch for hosting us. I think it's a pleasure, and I think both Alan and myself agree that we've learned a lot as well, as much as we hope to have shared whatever we've learned learn ourselves through 20, 30 years of our own bird watching and conservation work. I hope we have some time for questions and answer, because this is really the time that we can have a good conversation. And I noted that before I started talking, Mark posted a comment about Aleutian terns in Malaysia. So maybe Vuti, you want to highlight that as well. Yeah. So over to you, Vuti.
Okay, thank you, Ding Li, and also thank you, Alan. Unfortunately, we're short of time. So Alan, maybe we can do a part 2 for water birds, so maybe water birds identification. All right. So my apologies for that. So we will now move on to Q&A. So pass over to Adrian. Adrian, please. Oh, sorry. Before that, before we go, the quiz is now open. So I'll share you the link. Okay, if you, oops. Okay, if you open your app, you should be able to see the quiz link inside the app itself. It's not showing on my screen because I've already done the quiz when I was setting up, because you can only do the quiz one time. Okay, so I have already done, so it doesn't show here. But those of you who would like to do the quiz, go into your events for this Birds Galore, and you should have a link for you to do that. Okay, so we give 10 minutes for Q&A, also for the quiz at the same time. So over to Adrian. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Alan and Mr. Yong Ding. Okay, I am Adrian, and I'm in charge for the Q&A session. So for the first question from Jared Liu, is it easy to spot many parrots in Singapore?
Alan?
Yes, you can actually get to see them in their night roost. Easily 300 birds coming into any housing estate, but you got to know where they are. For the cockadoos, we also have a few places like Changi Point where they congregate. So most of the time you look for their roosts, and most of them know where the roosts are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alan. And for the next question from Boon Hyang Go, where is the best spot to find the masked lapwing in Singapore?
Alan, you have the answer.
The masked lapwing, you're talking about the Australian introduced species, correct? I think so.
In Singapore.
The marina, the wetland that I mentioned earlier, the flooded wetland, there's a few pairs there, but most of them actually can be found in the golf courses, like in Seletar Golf Course, in even Changi Golf Course. They are actually naturalized now in Singapore. So it's not a difficult bird to find. But anyway, it's not in the checklist at the moment.
Okay, that's all for the Q&A session. So lots of time to Mr. Alan and Mr. Yong Ding. So I will pass to Mr. Wuti for the next session.
Okay, we do have a few more minutes while the quiz is going on. I think we have a lot of birding friends here, very senior here. You can unmute and maybe have a conversation, share some information. Mark, you're talking about the Aleutian tern, right? Maybe you can share a bit.
Okay, we were on a pelagic trip a few years back, and we went off into the Straits of Malacca from Pangkalan Sungai Buloh, which is about 4 or 5 kilometers north of Kappa Power Station. And we went to the middle of almost 10 kilometers away from the shore, and we moved southwards towards the Carey Islands. And that's where we spotted the Aleutian tern sitting on some flotsam. And it was helped ID by Wilbur Goh. I think it was one of the few sightings, yeah.
That's a very good record. In fact, I don't remember coming across any records in the Malacca Straits. When was this, Mark?
That would be about 4 or 5 years ago. Many years.
What, just one bird?
Just one bird only.
Okay. Great, fantastic record.
The Malacca Straits have a lot of mysteries and interesting things that we don't check very often. Like off the coast of Kedah, you've got this Pulau Perak, formerly known to be brown booby colony there. I don't know what's the status of Pulau Perak right now. I assume the boobies are still there. Yeah, but I'm sure the combined expertise of this webinar, I'm sure Singh knows something about Pulau Perak.
Actually, I don't know anyone who's been because it's a military exercise place.
Ah, okay.
I heard they actually use it as target practice, so I don't know
Right.
how much is left, of where there was, yeah. But going back to illusion, we have recorded illusion of Bodixon in a couple of years ago.
Oh,
and
wow, okay.
I don't know people who have recorded of Parrot Jawa.
Parrot Jawa.
Tanjung Dawai.
Tanjung Dawai.
Tanjung Dawai also recorded.
One of Dave's pelagics, right, on the fishing boat.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so quite a.
Anything on the west coast? I mean, east coast side, Terengganu and Tioman, or any records in that area? But
not that I am aware of. No.
Interesting. Okay.
I think very few pelagics off those coasts as well, off the east coast.
Okay.
I know Hamza does the seabird survey, but he's focused on the colony only. I don't think he's going to, look for random birds flying over the sea. Yeah.
I think for us, the advantage is that the Straits of Singapore is so narrow. So, most of the birds, we can see them. The Straits of Malacca is such a, wide waterway. So you got to be very, very lucky to find the shorebirds over there.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that many experts on this panel can answer. I think somebody asked, where should we begin bird watching in Malaysia? I think if I have to say a really quick comment about that, is again dependent on which city you are in the country, because depending on where you are, there are different access to different parts, but I would defer to Seng, Mark, and other experts, Kim Chai, to answer that as well.
Well, Ding Li, like you said, it depends on where you are, and it also depends on what you want to see, whether you want coastal, lowland forest, or mountain forest, that kind of thing.
But I guess, the best part is a nearby park where you can get the common garden birds. That's the most convenient spot to start.
Yeah, we're trying to, of course, we have the My Garden Bird in June of every year. We have that program. We also will be looking to start like an urban bird watching sort of competition to encourage locals to go to their park because of this MCO and so on. You just go to your garden, go to your local parks, and then feed back the information through the app itself to make it easier. We are looking to engage, of course, the local MNS branches to be involved as well, so that we can organize, once the MCO and COVID is stabilized, we're looking to engage all branches to actually hold some sort of local birding activities, so that those who are living in the local area, they can contact the MNS branches. And this is one of the reasons why we're having this series of bird talks. We have birds from Singapore, and in a month's time, we're going to go to throughout Malaysia itself after the Raptor discussions. Okay. Any more comments from?
Woody, what about the Raptors Watch this March? What's the status now? Is it in March normally?
Yeah, the plan is going ahead, but of course it depends on the situation. In terms of planning, it's going ahead for the program, including the counting as well, Mark, right? So we'll be talking about that. Mr. Kim Chai will be giving us a talk next 2 weeks later, and then we will see from there. We have some programs for people to sign up onto as well. But of course, this is all planning. It really depends on the COVID situation. All right.
Okay, can I just say a few words?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the presentation done by Alan and Ding Li is great because I mean it's just very good examples of what bird groups in Peninsula can do. We can do so much more, but but then it's all a matter of getting enough volunteers and enough funds. But then it just goes to show that with a lot of committed members, with a lot of interest, we can do a lot of good good work. I just wanted to ask Alan about the number of introduced birds. I saw, I think it was something like 30 or 40 in the list.
Okay,
and I'm just,
sorry.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking whether NParks does any kind of, action to get rid of these birds, like in some countries, like in maybe Australia, with any introduced birds straight away, they go and get it and get rid of it. What kind of action does NParks do?
Anyway, Kimchai, it was nice to see you, and thanks for the compliment. I can tell you that guy sitting there, Ding Li, is a Superman.
Ding Li,
yes. one man show kind of thing. But anyway, we need a lot of your volunteers, and luckily in the great group we got a lot of people, and of course the leadership, Kim Chua and everybody else.
Yeah. I think maybe we need to clone some of you and bring over.
I know that our last gathering was in Mongolia, by the way.
I think so. Yeah. In terms of the introduced species, the number 30 it's actually out of the numbers from the website. I mean, from the checklist. But if you look at the actual number of introduced species, my guess is that it's in the region of 150 to 200. Ding Li, what do you think?
I think there are many more that are not common. Now, among the introduced species that have become abundant and numbers have grown steadily, I think there's a subset of about 20 plus species. Things like red-breasted parakeet that's introduced and have done quite well, right? And then you've got other not so well-known species like some of the waxbill, cordon bleu, wida, and that sort of thing. Yeah. And coming back to Kim Chai's point, what is the government doing about the introduced species? I don't have a good answer to it. As far as I understand, Alan can correct me if I'm wrong. They do some monitoring, but I think there is no culling activities as I understand right now. Yeah. Is there? I don't think there are.
No. We don't have a program though, because most of the people in Singapore, they are not against culling. The only culling that we actually actively pursue is the shooting of the house crows.
House crow.
Yeah, because that one, the population just exploded, and we managed to reduce it to 10%, so that's okay. We try to do something on the pigeons. I think that one they are going to do something. For the others, miners and all that.
Yeah, don't forget painted stock.
Painted stock.
Yeah.
For the miners, they try to make sure that the food sources are not there. Hawker centers where the miners are feeding and all that. So it's an inactive kind of management rather than active management for the NParks. I think there's a lot of public sentiments. Yeah, a lot of public sentiments against culling, because the last time they want to do it on the wild boars, created a big hoo-ha in Singapore.
Okay. I think the worry is that some of these birds may just cross over and grow to such numbers that they may impact agriculture. Who knows? I think Muniers, I'm not sure which Munier has already established in Johor, I think.
Javan, I think.
Yeah.
Javan.
Javan, yeah.
Javan,
So that probably came from Singapore, maybe.
Most likely lah. Must be.
You know, the
Anyway,
bird trade that we have in Singapore is so, you know, difficult. I think the other one was the use of what you call mercy release that we, you know, was practiced some years back. But,
I think still ongoing.
Yeah, but the MPACs and the some of the religious associations are now working together to teach their, you know, devotees that it's the wrong thing to do, not to release any of these wax bills and all kinds of African species. Actually, in Singapore now we have a lot of African species.
Okay,
so
thanks for the input, Alan and Ding Li. Thank you.
It's a serious concern lah. If you ask me, I would strongly advise what I would call management actions against wax bills, because wax bills can be quite serious to agriculture.
Recently, we had one koala. We were quite shocked when that destructive koala was seen in Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few more questions for Alan and Ding Li. This is just some comments from Chan Chi Lee. He said you can see straw-headed bulbuls along the river near the Endau-Rompin Park HQ. And there's some comment about the black-capped kingfisher in the grounds of NUS. Is that correct, Ding Li?
I'm not sure about the record in NUS, but I can only tell you that the black-capped kingfisher is a species that will become threatened species in a few years from now.
Okay.
It's not a good sign. It's declining quite quickly in Asia.
Okay. And
the record of the straw-headed Endau, how many birds were there, and where was this?
Endau-Rompin.
I saw a straw-headed bulbul with Izzat and Singh many years ago, also at Endau HQ. Singh, you remember that?
At Selai, right?
Yeah, Selai, yeah, but only one, I think.
Okay, so there's another comment from Yap Baoshan asking how he or she can contribute to more events in Singapore, like Raptor. Is this something public can get involved, Alan?
Yes.
NSS?
Yes, the Raptors Watch is open to the public, and we also actually conduct a short raptor sort of a course 1 week beforehand. I think Kim Chong does that for those who are bird watchers who are not familiar. And normally we get about 10 counters in one site. Some of them are new, some of them are old hand, and it's open to the public. And we actually try to encourage the, like Tonyang Tuan, getting more and more people to come and do raptor scout with us.
Okay, this one for Ding Li. One last question. For people who are interested to work as a researcher or conservationist, what's the pathway or process like to join BirdLife for bird research after graduation?
I think there are many ways to do conservation, and it may be that some of us will, work for NGOs, some of us will work for universities. I think depending on how old you are, I assume that if you are very young right now, the best way to learn is to gain as much knowledge as you can. Go bird watching with all the experts out there, learn, and then when you are in university, try to take a course that allows you to do bird research. Depending whether you are in Singapore or Malaysia. In Malaysia, I think forestry courses will allow you to potentially expand into a career in biodiversity research. In Singapore, you could probably join the university's life science courses. Either way, I mean, to be on such a career track, you need to basically learn more and meet people who are in this field. And that's where you can get opportunities. For me, I think, I mean, I've always been interested in birds myself. I started birding 30 years ago, slowly meeting all the seafoods and learning from them. And then, you know, sucking up the knowledge of everyone in KL and Singapore and trying to find a career out of it, you know. And bird life for us, we don't particularly work for any country. We work for the region. So it's if you do end up working for a big NGO, I think it's a great experience because you get to work with people from different cultures to protect the things that really mean a lot to you. Yeah. So for me, the bird that sucks up my life and my weekend is spoonbill sandpiper. Day in, day out, spoonbill sandpiper. I have to raise funds, write reports to allocate resources for spoonbill sandpiper or Nordman's greenshank wherever, or Far East curlew in Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, wherever. Yeah, and I think it's a great experience. You get to meet people and know people who are on your side who will work with you to get these wetlands preserved for future generations.
Okay, great, thanks. I think the best is to start bird watching with MNS or NSS, and then from there maybe you can swing some sort of career path. All right, so we're coming to the end. So Alan, I think we'll do a second part for water bird ID. I think that would be great. We can focus on that. Let me just check on the scoreboard today, because I had 90%, so nobody wanted to do the quiz. So we will just ignore the quiz for this week. Let me just share with you this screen. So basically, because we have a lot of people still asking us for what you call this Zoom links via WhatsApp. So we've tried to make it easy for everybody. So the Zoom link is actually in every event. There is a Zoom link. It will be released maybe 20 minutes or 15 minutes before the talk, so that we don't get people coming in and there's nobody there. So this is one way for us to optimize our talks and also to better utilize the resources we have. So just a big shout out to all our volunteers. We had Adrian, Dr. Haslawati will be helping to do the video editing, translation and editing, and Karina was in charge of the quiz master. All right, so big thank you to the team. And I think in 2 weeks' time, we'll be talking about the raptors. And we look forward to seeing Lim Kim Chai in front of us. And until that time, we'd like to say special thanks to Alan, Owyong, and also Yong Ding Li. Thank you for spending your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. Good to see all the old friends as well.
Yes, yeah. I see everybody, all the good friends. I mean, not say good friends, our old colleagues and friends are still sticking around here. So until next 2 weeks later, we see you again. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Buti. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a great Saturday.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Yep. Take care. Yep.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Have a good AWC.
Thanks, Ding Li.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Please find more Nordman's greenshank.
Bye.
Maybe you can
offer once only in Mersing.
Oh, once.
Okay. Once, yeah.
Ding Li, maybe like $1,000 US per Nordman's greenshank.
I think we can. I think if we have a Nordman's greenshank competition, Penang sure win one, confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. All right. See you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great